Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's so nice to see you all out there. And on behalf of Tanya, Jeff, and Michelle, I introduce myself. I'm Judy Phillips. This is my husband, Dan Phillips. And we've been given the honor of welcoming you here today. Thank you so much for coming. It means so much to the family. And I think it means a lot to all of us that are here, just to see each other and finally meet some of the famous people that Judy always talks about. She's such a storyteller, and now I'm getting to meet some people that, cousins and relatives and old friends that she's always talked about, but I never got to meet. So that's part of what's wonderful about today. Judith brings us together today just as she did on so many occasions where we were always welcomed. We could laugh, cry, confide, complain, and just be ourselves. And that's how I hope that we can all be today. And she would really like that. Her remarkable creative family has fashioned and assembled a wonderful program that highlights the landmarks of her life on Earth.
The family thanks you for so many sweet remembrances that have already been received. We wish we could hear from all of you today, but we're limited by time. So please continue to send your personal messages to Tanya at tanya.knoop@gmail.com. For those who are computer challenged, it's find a friend. Tanya.knoop, that dot is important. And they will be published online and in hard copy for you to see in Judy's memory book. You may have seen an initial version of it outside on the table, but there will be another version with more material in it. So please do send your remembrances to Tanya via email. After the program, we shall have more sharing time until 6 to mingle in the lobby where refreshments will be served. So hold your horses. I'm sure things will occur to you in the course of the afternoon you'll want to share. Thank you very much. Okay, please join us now in call and response fashion for a Jewish prayer loved by Judith that is in your program entitled, We Remember Them. Judy and I will lead, and this is Judy, of course, another Judy. We used to call Judy, it basic Judaism. All the Judys have something in common. Please, we're going to substitute, when you respond to each line that we give, respond with, we remember her, instead of we remember them. Okay, you want to start?
At the rising of the sun and at its going down,
we remember her.
At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter,
we remember her.
At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring,
we remember her.
At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer,
we remember her.
At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of the autumn,
we remember her.
At the beginning of the year and when it ends,
we remember her.
As long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us, as
we remember her.
When we are weary and in need of strength,
we remember her.
When we are lost and sick at heart,
we remember her.
When we have decisions that are difficult to make,
we remember her.
When we have joy we crave to share,
we remember her.
When we have achievements that are based on hers,
we remember her.
For as long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us as
we remember her.
Thank you. Now let us proceed with the program. Tanya?
Soon after Judy died, the completeness of who she was became so clear to me. I am awestruck now by the power of her presence, as this sense of her life as a single event, a totality, has persisted in my mind for the last 7 weeks. Judy touched all of our lives with her courage, vision, warmth, ferocity, humor, creativity, and her remarkable beauty. She was the embodiment of think globally, act locally. She worked passionately for what she believed in, and at the same time, she was dedicated to taking care of me, Michelle, and Jeffrey, doing everything that she could to provide us with all the things that children need: education, guidance, blintzes on Christmas, birthday cakes, and motherly love. She taught me how to make chicken soup, question authority, how to be tough, how to be vulnerable, how to have fun, and how to love. There was a theme that ran through everything that she cared about: babies. Her passion was for women's health, specifically reproductive health. As a midwife, she brought babies into the world to take their first breath. At San Francisco General Hospital, she managed and supervised the delivery of prenatal services to over 70,000 women. Every new arrival of a close friend's grandchild was an occasion to make and give a baby's quilt. Time and time again, she would stop in the street to rejoice over a baby or little child that she had delivered, or that she hadn't. And of course, her grandchildren. I think of the antics she told us of her childhood, the bohemian she was in high school, where she met her intellectual and equally rebellious match, John Knoop. They were married in an Indiana cornfield by a friend studying to become a rabbi. They then fled to Mallorca, where Michelle and I were born. I'm so grateful to have such extraordinary parents. They made my childhood fascinating and complex, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I saw the 60s in San Francisco with concerts in the Panhandle and picnics at Hippie Hill, the powerful West Coast women's movement of the late 60s and 70s that paved the way for my generation and those to follow. The women's movement, the women's health movement that brought natural childbirth to the mainstream. They set outstanding examples of what people can do together to change the world. Judy was my protector, my advocate, and my good friend. I carry on now inspired by the sense of the fullness of her life. It's appropriate that we are here on Martin Luther King weekend, celebrating the lives of people who have the courage to follow their convictions. Judith brought us together in the past, and she has brought us all together today to rekindle our connections and bonds. I've asked myself, how could there be a world without Judith? There isn't. She's here in us all. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Myrn Mayerson Flower. I am Judy's sister. My beautiful sister Judy, beautiful in spirit and beautiful in mind. There's an emptiness in this world without her. We were always Myrna and Judy. We understood each other. That was nice. As kids, there was a birthday party. We were not invited, and that was not good. Together, we found a box. We threw grass, bugs, crickets, grasshoppers, written around that box. And side by side, we mischievously walked to that party. Joyce, the 5-year-old girl whose birthday it was. You got it. You must have been there. She opened that box and that kid screamed. It was unnecessary because we hadn't done that much. But at any rate, we ran because Joyce's mother was in hot pursuit. She told this hard story to our father. He laughed. I kind of thought he would, but you never know. We were safe. Judy always had the courage of her convictions. Now, like a candle in the wind, she has left us. And I will always remember my sister Judy. Thank you.
I'm Sandy Whitstein, and I met Judy Mayerson in the 4th grade. I had just moved to a new neighborhood and changed schools. I don't remember if we were in the same class, but we did live on the same street. Judy at one end, me at the other. What I remember most during the early years was that after school, Judy would walk down to my house and we would just hang out. My family owned a dog. My sister and I were basically indifferent, but Judy truly loved Peppy. I sometimes think that Peppy was the primary attraction. When Judith and I traveled to Alaska, we visited an Iditarod farm. I have pictures of Judith enjoying the puppies, playing with them, holding them. She had a wonderful time. One highlight of those early years was Lindy's New York cheesecake. My father was not allowed to return from a buying trip empty-handed. I can still picture Judy, my sister and I, excitedly listening for his car to pull into the garage. Strawberry or cherry topping, it mattered not. There is a family story that I would like to share and discuss. Lore has it that Judy was preparing for a bat mitzvah and announced to the family that she wanted to be a rabbi. And when her family rejected this idea, she refused to go through with the service. Well, remember, this was 1952, and the first female rabbi was ordained in the 70s. However, here's what I suspect happened. She probably said she wanted to be a rabbi, and when her family said that was just not possible, she probably quit religious school. That's what I guess, I'm not sure. But from a very early age, I watched Judy's determination to be her own person. It's interesting to me that while our lives took different paths, they touched in a human elemental way. In high school, we joined Fellowship House, determined to work against racial injustice. a path that we followed in our adult lives. We both gave birth outside the United States, and we both returned to school after our children were born. I attended Judy's somewhat unconventional wedding, and for full disclosure, my ex and now deceased husband performed some kind of a ceremony. There were years when our contact was sparse, but our friendship remained solid. We were very close the last 15 years. I made several trips to San Francisco, and she attended my grandson's bar mitzvah in New York, and we traveled to Alaska, a trip that Judy really loved, and we were actually planning some future excursions. As I look out at her friends, co-workers, I realize how many people knew, appreciated, and loved Judith. Yet no one else can say, sorry, she was my closest friend for 65 years. I've loved her, I miss her, and she will be with me for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Bright lights, but it's great to know that you're all out there, even if I can't see you because of this. So thanks for coming, and thanks for bringing your memories of a person who was truly great. I know how lucky I was that I got to begin my adult life with Judith. And after those early years, all of us were here together. And so I'm doubly grateful to be here with family today. It began for Judy and I when we were seniors at Walnut Hills High School in Cincinnati. She and I were both sure that we deserved each other, regardless of Orthodox tradition. I could tell that Sarah, her mother, was suspicious whenever I picked Judy up. Introduced as Marvin Friedman. Somehow we got away with it. At our graduation ceremony, I traded places with Marv so that this scheme that we had cooked up so that Judy and I could date might continue. The vice principal, Mr. Ludicky, was startled when I walked up to the stage for Marv's poem. But he handed it to me without a pause. And then when Marv walked up to get my diploma, there were some titters in the audience. Judy and I were among the nonconformist rebels in our class. We didn't join the teams, or the sororities, or the fraternities. We mocked the ones who did and played by our own rules. 2 years later, after taking a leave of absence from Columbia College, I rode off to Argentina on a motorcycle, thinking of Judy as my Penelope and sending her my journal entries along the way. She acted on a generous impulse and brought those accounts of my adventure out to my parents' farm to share with them. When I returned a year later, it was like she was already part of the family. So we asked each other if we shouldn't get married, and then we decided we should. We were ready to trade in our independence to be together. And she was ready to escape Cincinnati to explore France and Spain with me, and then settle in Mallorca to give birth to Tanya. She was a tough traveler and never complained or whined. Always expressed confidence as a pre-med student in her own ability to take care of herself. And after meeting a genuine Earth Mother, Maria, the midwife in the mountain village of Deya, Judy had no interest in hospitals and no fear of home delivery. In later years, after we split up, Judy was always magnanimous and ready to continue her role as mother of our tribe, inviting us all to her great holiday feasts. Her spirit is still in command, bringing us here together today. Thanks for being here.
My name is Basha Schamberg. I met Judy in 1967, the amazing San Francisco year of 1967. She was an exotic older woman of 27. I was 22. I ended up on her doorstep, or more accurately at her, I believe, blue-painted kitchen table, which was later painted green as far as I remember, because I followed her brother-in-law, Rudy Knoop. I don't know if he's in the audience, to San Francisco. I had a big crush on Rudy. Rudy left a couple of days later. And I remained to get to know and love Judy, who was a major love of my life, a major pillar in my foundation. So it turned out to be not Rudy, but Judy. When I met her, her thighs were about this big, and her rear end was about this big. She was in a vulnerable state. She wasn't eating much. She was at a couple of bites of yogurt a day. And I developed a theory right on the spot that women with little rear ends did much better in life than women with big rear ends. And I think in this country that's really true. I met Judy at a very, very vulnerable time in her life. The marriage had just broken up, and it was a very young marriage, so no blame to anybody. And she was frightened, you know, and she was frightened. She was a single mother now with 3 kids. I never knew what she saw in me. I was kind of hitchhiked from Texas, had Texas dust behind my ears. She was a lifeline to me. She was a refuge to me. I was homeless. I probably, if I had $10 to my name, I was lucky. But she invited me into her home. I saw us, this was not true of the children, but I saw Judy and I as 2 companions in a lifeboat, like a yellow little plastic lifeboat, hanging onto the sides, navigating the tumultuous sea change that was going on in the 60s. As we all remember, it was, unless you're really young, it was a really time of major change. Jeffrey was 1½, and he was very fond of curling out his food and putting it in his hair, and curls in it, and laughing. He was kind of like an adorable, wicked little boy. Tanya, I think, was 6, and Michelle was 5. And I found these girls so interesting. They were deep thinkers. I was interested in their thoughts, what they did. It was such a creative, interesting family. I felt like I really entered a higher intellectual, creative precinct than I had lived in before. What I really loved was sitting at Judy's kitchen table and listening to her talk. She was one of the most creative, colorful talkers I've ever seen, even on film. She had amazing images. She was so interesting. I likened being with Judy to biting into a piece of really fresh-baked brown bread, full of the goodness and the richness of life. Her roof leaked. I remember, none of us had money. I remember she rolled very graciously, she rolled up the sleeve of a green wool sweater she was wearing so people couldn't see the hole. She was a gracious, very valiant young Jewish woman. She was vulnerable. She was valiant. What I want people to know, and probably if anyone knew her well, they knew that she was in many times kind of a fragile, vulnerable person, which is all the more amazing for everything that she accomplished. She wasn't a naturally, she had the passion of her convictions, but she did things even if she was afraid. She was that, I guess when I met her when she was 27, we belonged together, me and her, partially because of that. But I've always loved that fragile part of her. She was a valiant woman. She was vulnerable and brave. Brave in spite of her fears. She was valiant.
My name is Robin Sharon, and I met Judy in 1969 when I moved into her house. As a renter, I lived downstairs with my boyfriend, and Pasha lived upstairs with the girls. I was 19, Judy was 30. I met her for the first time when I moved into her house. She wore floor-length, tiger-striped culottes, had kids playing on the floor, and I was smitten. I was already politically involved, but more than ready for feminism. Judy inspired me and taught me a lot. She also needed and received a lot from me. She was a single mother with 3 children living on welfare. I became a part of the family, living downstairs, then upstairs. We shopped and cooked and folded up Jeff's tiny little jeans at the laundromat. I don't think I got a chance to clean because Judy was a demon in that department. We had so much fun and hardly any money. We'd throw the kids in the car and have adventures. We took a camping trip to one of the San Juan Islands where we ran out of food and tried to bake muffins on the girls' toy oven. Using berries we picked for flavor and the sun for heat. It didn't work. Judy and Jeff could not stop talking about corned beef sandwiches. We'd pop huge paper sacks of popcorn and sneak into the balcony of the Cowell Theatre when Tanya worked there. Judy and I could spend hours at the old Woolworths looking at dime store jewelry, trying on rings. Once we splurged on a goose for New Year's Eve, and we roasted it at my house 2 blocks away. It wouldn't fit in her tiny oven, and we carried it, the 2 of us, into her house for our fancy schmancy dinner party. Judy told me that John's family taught her how to do Christmas, and I ended up with her family for 20 of them, sleeping over on Christmas Eve, and in the morning we'd put out grapefruit halves with maraschino cherries on top that no one would eat, and we'd throw them back in the jars for the next year. The most fun we had was talking in the living room, talking on the phone, talking in the pool at Calistoga, talking and laughing our heads off. We had matching rings, matching nightgowns with donkeys on them, and a friendship that lasted 45 years.
name is Nina Serrano. I'm wearing Judy Knoop's shirt, and it feels wonderful. I met Judith around 1965, almost 50 years ago, on a staircase at our children's school. She was a little bit pregnant, but it didn't show, and looking snazzy in a fur jacket, jeans, and high boots, with long, flowing brown hair, a dazzling young woman full of wit, style, and mischief. We were both about to move into neighboring houses around the corner from each other. Our two families blended. Our husbands were both journalists. Our daughters liked to play together. And my son shepherded the whole crew to school every morning on 3 buses. Judy and I took mountains of laundry to the laundromat, exchanging stories, opinions, and laughter. She was a brilliant storyteller with tales about her earlier years in Mallorca, Spain, under the influence of expatriate mystic intellectuals like Robert Graves and Inder Straw, and the earthy wisdom of the Mallorcan midwives who had helped her through pregnancies and birth. We weren't just describing our lives. We were trying to figure out how to change the world and make it better. The whole planet around us was on the same trajectory with the war in Vietnam raging. Judy and I embraced the popular social change movements of the 1960s. I was experimenting with 8mm film. Judy joined in to make a children's film about 3 clowns who gave away free popcorn throughout scenic San Francisco. We played the clowns, followed by our children, and chased by greedy evil forces. Judy nursed her baby between takes. We launched the film at the old Fillmore Auditorium, and we were a hit. Soon after, Judy's life crashed when her husband left and she was alone with 3 small children. She rebounded as a mighty, angry force as the burgeoning women's movement was meeting at her house. Judy and I performed street theater at anti-Vietnam rallies and minority rights demonstrations. Judith emerged as a leader in welfare mothers' rights groups. One day, she decided to go to nursing school to support her family. Her spiritual and education calling united, and she evolved as a healer and pioneer in women's health. 50 years is a long time in a friendship. We saw each other through all the stages into old age. Every Monday for the last few years, Judy and I would meet for lunch and talk, still trying to figure the world out. We'd go to a dance class, no tutu. Sometimes we performed at senior residences, tempting people out of wheelchairs and catatonic states to dance and to play. Since Judith left us, Mondays still echo her absence, and that missing space of shared laughter, opinions, and stories. I miss her, my beloved friend, Judith.
As an MC, I have no excuse, but I was out of order. So I'm going to give my little piece here. And actually, I knew her in the 60s too, but it goes back before that. Judith, aka Judy, and I had a long-lasting friendship. We both lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the predominantly Jewish South Avondale district. Coming from separate directions to Avondale School, we passed synagogues and Hebrew schools, on streets permeated by the pungent odors of fresh bagels and challah, all kinds of deli delights, including briny pickles and barrels. Even the acrid aroma of burnt feathers at the local butchers who pulled pullets and scaled and filleted fresh fish. However, Judy and I didn't meet until we attended college prep, Walnut Hills High. Already famous in high school, Judy was voted the prettiest by her class, besides being known as one of the smartest and most vivacious. Also, Judy and John had a reputation as rebels, as John told you, who refused to join fraternity and sororities who ruled the social life at the school. They achieved a lot of notoriety, though, as steadies. To us jazz musicians who normally put down the squares who dated, they were our bohemian king and queen. I met them both in our mutual friend Marvin Lieberman's basement, where a select group of us met regularly to listen to jazz, eat pizza, and drink Chablis. It was the only wine that we knew from California. There we hatched all kinds of anti-establishment plots, like attending the opera in our bathrobes and playing hooky whenever we felt the urge. We partied hardy on an old flat-bottomed scow we bought, affectionately called the Bludgeon, that mostly stayed docked. Only on occasion did we dare to bludgeon our way through the swift and dangerous current of the Ohio River. One fateful night, Judy and John somehow managed to put a hole in the deck and scuttled the boat. I don't know if you remember that. We could only imagine what kind of furious activity they were engaged in to cause that accident. Serious, sober scholars we weren't, but adventurers risking anything to have fun, impossible dreamers, and voracious readers who loved to recite Dylan Thomas, probe the intricacies of Eliot's Wasteland, engaged in endless rants and raves concerning the meaning of life. We were. Soon after graduating high school in '55, I lost track of Judy. In '65, after my wife and I had moved to San Francisco, we happened to run into the Knoop family at a festival at Presidio Hill, where their kids went to school. The two Judys immediately became fast friends. That's where that basic Judaism came from. She gave us a cartoon one day that had that, and it was on our refrigerator for years. Remember? Since that serendipitous day in '63, we celebrated the richness of our life whenever we could. Now, as we came into the city today, it was just, our feelings were overcome, and we had nobody to visit here anymore. And we just cherish that memory because we would never think of going to San Francisco without at least calling her and visiting her many times. Thank you very much.
Hey everybody. Hi, I'm Jeff, Judith's son. So, clearly Judy was a magnet, and she attracted amazing, wonderful people. This is evidence of that. So, it's such a sad occasion, but it's also, I feel a lot of joy. I've been looking forward to seeing all of you, and so thank you for being here. And I'm talking about the '60s, and that's what I wanted to talk about a bit, because it was such a magical time, and but it was, obviously in San Francisco, it was the center of the cultural counterculture. Vietnam War was raging, and at the same time, my memory of it mostly was that, people were striving to be loving and generous and community-oriented, and so, our house was kind of definitely living proof of that, and, the door was always open. There were friends and family dropping by, and that was very comforting. And then we had, these amazing people who came into our lives and lived with us, and so it was really nice to hear Basha and Robin. And I have some really fun memories. I remember going to, I was probably about 2, and I went with Basha to a party in Berkeley, and we were dancing to the latest Rolling Stones record. And so I feel like some of that is why I became, a rock musician. And also, I used to, Robin lived downstairs, and she was a really good baker and made these cookies that I was crazy for. And so I got caught one time early in the morning sneaking down there with a big paper grocery bag, pulling them out of her can. And she was really nice about it. I was always and still kind of embarrassed about that. And then Brian came into my life with my glasses on, but I know you're out there. And I had 2 older sisters and all these women, and Brian came into my life at 5 and helped to raise me. And was always a rock, amidst all the chaos. And Judy was really busy and raising us and going to nursing school and being part of the anti-war and the feminist movement and joining the Women's Health Center and helping to propel that, and then also having a full social life. And I ran around with her a lot, and a lot of interesting memories. But one of the ones that she liked to tell the story of how I went with her to karate class. I actually remember this, and they were stretching, and her hair was touching the floor, and she said, and so apparently I said, "Hey Mom," I had this deep voice, "careful, you're gonna get your hair dirty." So she thought that was really funny, and she that I was looking out for her, and she was very very protective of us, and and really taught us that to be there for people unconditionally, and I guess I'll miss her sense of humor a lot. She just had I won't say wicked, but a great sense of humor, and really didn't hold back, and just was deep, and was really open-minded. I could talk to her about things that other people might just think crazy, and she was always ready to understand and step back and say, "Wow, maybe that is true." And that was kind of part of her having such great politics too, and always being there when when things were just really difficult or something horrible was happening for somebody, and she was just there unconditionally. And so thanks a lot, you guys. Appreciate you being here.
Hello, my name is Tom Solinger, and I'm about to play a musical interlude. I was only going to say one sentence, but unfortunately I'm completely overwhelmed. I have to tell you, I was very close to Judy. I was her boyfriend for about 3 years in the late 70s. And we had a fantastic time together. It was just a revelation what Dan said about the jazz scene in Cincinnati, because I wondered what attracted her to me, and it must have been that I was an eccentric jazz violinist. And I believe we played more than one party at her house with my buddies in those days in the Noe Valley. And it just brings back incredible memories. She was the most amazing person. And if I get a little shaky playing, I'm usually a pretty solid violin player, but I am a little emotionally overwhelmed. Anyway, her requested tune, Imagine by John Lennon. What could be more appropriate? I'm going to try to do it over here and hopefully it'll carry.
I was so awed by how much he knew about babies. And I guess we were connected by Nina and Saul Landau, and we were going to buy the house next door to her. That's, I think, how we first met. Jenny and Fred Gardner had got the house, moved in there for, I don't know, 3 months or something, and left to start the GI Coffee House movement. So this is all a very political story. So we moved in there, and here we were. Judy and I got to be really good friends. We were two recently divorced Jewish women, very political, from Cincinnati, Ohio. It turned out that my sister went to Walnut Hills. I think she was quite a bit older, but she sort of knew to me. So there were a lot of connections. And I think in the very early days living in that house, we would meet over the fence. We were both independently somehow working for the Black Panther Party. And we were terrified. And we would, you know, whisper to each other whatever we had done that was so terrifying. You know, and we wouldn't talk to anybody else. It was really, we were pretty funny. So we would just tell each other, you know, whatever we were doing. And at the same time, we were dealing with recent divorces and our kids. And then the next thing you know, we were out at San Francisco State on strike, shut it down. And our kids were, okay, I think Jeffrey was 3, and Stephen was 4, and Daniel was 5. And they were in front of the house carrying homemade picket signs saying, on strike, shut it down. And I think they watched the evening news together and were as scared as we had been in our earlier political activities. So through all of this, we had absolutely no consciousness of the oppression of women and ourselves as women. I mean, Judy had been really into and taught me a lot about, you know, childbirth and nursing and, you know, women's health issues, but somehow we were always like taking risks for other people's oppression. We were totally doing it for other people, being political activists for other oppressed individuals. So then came the women's movement, and it really changed our lives. Jenny Gardner had come back from New York. She had been in, I think, one of the first consciousness-raising groups in New York, and she organized me and Judy, and I think Judy was more receptive than I was. I was like, I want to do that. I'll never see men again. We were still single. But we got into the first women's group together, and, you know, after the very first meeting, it's kind of just, our consciousness went through the roof and never came back. I think we've all spent the rest of our lives, and Judy her whole life, working in one way or another to change the position and the experiences of women, and for ourselves as women. I think you all know Judy's life was really devoted to the liberation of women. So from our small beginnings, Judy became a real pioneer. I think a lot of us are saying they're a true pioneer in the women's health movement, and I think that was nationally. So there are many, many stories from our women's liberation days. I, too, remember a camping trip. We were so macho, we could do everything ourselves. Judy had gotten an invitation from somebody in Mendocino who said we could come, bring all the kids and sleep in their ranch, at their ranch. So we drove up with all these kids, and I don't know if any of the kids remember this. And we got there and we're told, you've got to sleep on platforms because of the rattlers. We, you know, macho, we freaked out. Threw the kids in the car, drove back to Guerneville, and camped out in the redwoods with our kids running around and wrote poetry. We really felt liberated in this for a few minutes there. So it's really hard to put in words how it is. Over 47 years, raising our kids, Tanya, Michelle, and then Jeffrey, who formed a gang of sorts with Daniel and Stephen, they really did. Through thick and thin, we were quietly there for one another in times of trouble. When there was no trouble, we were just there. I had this very deep trust for Judy, always. I knew she could and would cope with any emergency that happened, anything at all. It was almost like our houses were connected, and in some way
back of our houses, the walls are so thin, they kind of are connected. I know Jeff feels her right through it. So for 47 years, we were there. And when I left the house or I came home, I expected to see Judy through so many changes, really through lifetimes. Going out, coming home, we check in with one another. And it's painful right now. Every time I go out and come back, I still expect to see her and spend a few moments hearing, often in our own code. We did sort of have a code. It's okay or it's not okay. I think in the last 10 years it was often, I'm cutting my hair, I'm letting it go gray. It was like, it wasn't too subtle, but it was really how we were. I miss her every day, and it's really strange to lose someone you loved and trusted so much, often without words, but always present. I really love Judy. Together with our children on 23rd Street, we went from 0 to high consciousness overnight, really, after our first small group meeting. And while our relationship was so very personal and sort of familial, our connection was also powerfully political. I think that feeling of Judy's politics just permeates what everyone's saying. I miss Judy. I keep feeling something's missing when I go out or I come back, and it's Judy. Now, Pam Edwards-Gill will say a few things.
Hi, I'm Pam Edwards-Gill, and I met Judy Knoop in 1967, very shortly after Lynn. I had come to San Francisco looking for work, and I was suffering from the trauma of being a well-educated woman, hitting the men's wanted ads, the women's wanted ads in the employment sections. Remember, two different types of jobs available, and it was pretty upsetting. Through Indiana friends, I met Lynn O'Connor. I rented her downstairs apartment with Judy next door. And I got wind of the women's liberation movement. It was definitely in the air, at least around there. And I wanted to join the movement, which explained at least some of the frustrations and the humiliation that I was experiencing on the streets, in relationships, in the job market. And Lynn introduced me to Judy and Jenny Gardner started another women's consciousness raising group, which is how these things grew from one group to the next group to the next. And I joined, and there were daily revelations washing over us regarding the conditions of our lives as women and because we were women. Judy's path as a nurse took a decided turn towards women's health. I remember the women's clinic that I haven't heard anybody mention it yet, but it was a dress store. Now it is a dress store on 24th and Church, which she and others started. It was a very seat-of-your-pants operation, but they were so good-hearted, and they risked being charged with practicing medicine without a license, treating yeast infections, which are not big deals, but can run very expensive if you have to go to the doctor to pay for it. They collected needed items for women struggling with poverty. They talked and acted about matters of women's health. And my favorite of their actions was they kept dossiers on doctors. And you could write whether the guy was friendly, interesting, seemed well-grounded and decent, or if he was a real pig. And for many reasons, this was really important, and I think rather dangerous at the time. One reason was that California had just begun to allow abortions, and Roe versus Wade had not passed on the federal level, and the requirements for this service were really stringent and time-consuming in a situation that is extremely time-sensitive. Knowing which doctors were kind, decent, and helpful was critical. Then Judy began the birthing center at San Francisco General. She worked at that for years. Seemed to be mostly when I'd see her, she was at work. She was at work. She occasionally gave someone a tour that we knew or ourselves, but she was at work. Still for me, and I'm sure for many others, she was occasionally available for advice on health issues, ranging from pregnancy to menopause, and the before and after of all that. Also, what she did was pioneering, and she did an amazing job. My heart goes out to her close friends, her family, and especially to her children, who I remember well from seeing them here, but also as joyful young kids playing in the yards. Thank you.
Hello, friends. My name is Penn Garvin, and I'm up here today with Diane and Mona and Robin. And we are very honored to represent the women of the San Francisco Women's Health Center. I'd like to ask that there are other women in the audience who have worked at the Women's Health Center. If you would please stand so you can see how many of us are here, because we were to honor Judith. Many of us remain good friends with Judith over the years, but everyone who just stood, everyone's lives were touched by Judith's vision and her leadership. And we'd like to give you some idea of her involvement in the Women's Health Center and also her impact that she had. In 1971, a small group of women started to meet together to discuss the patriarchal nature of the healthcare system. Does that sound familiar? The second wave of the women's movement was in its heyday, and this group soon founded the San Francisco Women's Health Center. We rented a storefront on 24th Street in Noe Valley and started a referral service based on women's experiences with healthcare providers. The former speaker referred to this as dossiers, but it was not quite dossiers. In early 1972, Judith came on the scene, along with two other women, Jerry and Nyla, who were working on a health issue for the feminist newspaper Motherlode. These three brave women proposed that the collective explore a radical new approach to women's health care, using a self-exam with a speculum, flashlight, and mirror to understand how their own bodies worked and to share this knowledge and experience with other women. Many in the collective formed a weekly self-exam group, and we met at Judith's house for quite a long time. We began studying through direct observation, discussion, sharing, and further studies. And we began to define our own bodies and our own ideas of what we as women wanted from the medical establishment. It was radical, powerful, and heady stuff. We called this model of healthcare self-health, and Judith played a key role in helping us younger women in our 20s. She was an older woman in her 30s, and she was a mother. Understand how self-health fitted into the larger changes that women were demanding. She brought her incredible energy, her excitement, her desire to make things better, and her ability to see things in a larger context. Judith led the collective's inclusion of activities that focused on taking back pregnancy and birth as a natural, non-medical event. She also brought in women such as Verna Pedrin, who brought Beverly Rutzik, and these two visionaries applied the model to older women's care as they explored the taboos around menopause and aging. The collective thus became a group of women of various ages from a variety of experiences and backgrounds. It was an exciting and empowering time at the San Francisco Women's Health Center, and many new women joined. We taught classes in self-exam, wrote pamphlets, developed a library, expanded the referral service, met with women from other parts of the country who were pushing into new arenas of women's health care. We took specula, and taught classes wherever there were groups of women, from junior league members in Nob Hill to members of Coyote, a union of sex workers. Judith was very much at the center of all these activities, including the production in 1974 of the 23-minute film Self-Health, which you'll see a few minutes of tonight. The culmination and recognition of this work came in 1976 with a grant from the San Francisco Foundation that funded Verna, Judith, and me to bring the self-health model developed at the San Francisco Women's Health Center into the mainstream setting at San Francisco General Hospital. To be honest, in the beginning, we were an alien, hierarchical territory that focused on disease and not health and prevention. We worked in the OBGYN clinics and persevered and adjusted, and the result was that the staff and doctors eventually saw the value of our work to better educate patients as participants in their own healthcare decisions. At the hospital, Judith was in her element. A nurse by profession and a community educator at heart, she was able to take this radical new idea of self-health based on self-exam and turn it into prenatal classes and counseling to support non-English speaking women, poor women, and young women who knew nothing about their bodies and were often very scared. Judith developed an extremely successful program of labor coaches, training lay women to support pregnant women during labor. Today we call these labor coaches doulas. Once again, Judith was way ahead of her time. The birth project at San Francisco General was truly an outstanding accomplishment, resulting in more informed and empowered women delivering their babies in an environment that understood that labor and delivery were not medicalized events to be managed, but rather a process that needed to unfold naturally with women in control. At the same time, Judith continued to be involved in the Thursday Birth Center activities at the San Francisco Women's Health Center until 1982, when it was time to close the doors. After the foundation funding in San Francisco General Hospital ended, the hospital integrated the prenatal and birth program into its perinatal services with Judith at its lead. Thus, the work that started in a storefront on 24th Street, which is truly now a clothing store, more than 40 years ago by a collective of women that no longer exists, this project continues today, a living legacy to Judith's vision. Thank you very much. And then Robin's going to talk a little bit about the self-help film, and we're going to see a little bit of it.
Hi, I'm Robin Roth, and I first met Judith in the mid-70s when I joined the San Francisco Women's Health Collective. And honestly, at first I found Judith kind of intimidating. She seemed to know exactly what should be done and said so quite forcefully. But actually, she really did know what should be done. And I loved working with her and loved doing the Monday night drop-in vaginal self-exams. And as I got to know Judith better, I really saw her softer side. Her great sense of humor, her genuine caring about people, the feelings that were behind her deep political convictions, and how she handled her doubts and her fears. I think she really modeled how to move forward in spite of them and how to move others forward. Judith was a really inspiring leader, and all of us, I know I learned a lot from her. We learned a lot in many ways over a 40-year friendship that saw many get-togethers, many hikes, many years in the Midlife Women's Health Group, another group she helped start. Many beta breakers we did together, always in costume, usually with a political theme. I remember one of our favorites was we made t-shirts that said something like, the only thing that moves slower than the beta breakers going up Hayes Hill is the pharmacy line at San Francisco General, which was relevant to a struggle at that time. So we had so many fine times, all starting with the radical work of the San Francisco Women's Health Collective, work that continues to this day in many different ways, one of which being how the self-health video is still shown at City College of San Francisco's Women Health Issues classes. Speculums are still sold at cost. Women are given extra credit for writing about doing a vaginal self-exam. And the work continues, and this is work that you can all join by signing the Trust Women's petition on the table outside. Judith would have been the first to sign, and in her honor, we all have a chance to sign that and try and combat the lies about abortion that are on banners on Market Street right now. But anyway, right now we get to see Judith and hear her even more in voiceovers, and I'm going to show a little 4-minute clip that was edited from the 1974 film Self-Health by Allie Light, who's here with us.
Self-help breaks down the mystery that says medical care is difficult to understand. We're learning from our own bodies, teaching ourselves and each other how each of us is unique and the same, and what we need in order to be healthy. We see it as reclaiming lost territory that belonged traditionally to our doctors, our husbands, to everyone but us, and now it's time to get it back.
What does anybody else feel? One other person I know just is completely turned off. It's such a yucky thing down there.
But I know that I've been doing this for about 2 years. In the summer, I went to have the regular pap smear and pelvic exam, and as soon as I got into the stirrups, that whole feeling came back, and I really remembered, and I felt completely vulnerable and terrified. And it's like the miner's cap sticking over the drape. And finally I said, okay, I have to deal with this some way. And I said, I just took the curtain and I pulled it off and I threw it in the garbage can. And it really blew his mind. Like he said, I never thought of that how ominous it is to see the head of this person, and this part of you is divided. It's not yours.
In a way, and I can appreciate the fact that it has to be sanitary when a doctor is doing woman after woman after woman. But in a way, the fact that it's sanitary and there's the rubber glove and everything is so, it's like it makes you squeamish about your own body.
Well, especially when you're taught not to touch yourself anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
I went from a place when I was becoming, when I was entering puberty, I discovered all my pubic hair at once. Like I didn't know it was coming. I discovered it all at once because I never touched myself. I never looked at myself. And I know through the sex therapy, like looking a lot and touching a lot, it's just like I have to remember back to how that felt. Like I think the exposure and just doing it.
It's amazing things you're saying, like having to remember what it felt like. That I had an IUD put in before I ever did self-help, and afterwards, when I knew what my cervix was and where the IUD had been put in, I thought, where in the world did I think that doctor put that thing? I had no concept of what it was, and you forget that what it feels like. What's it up? We want to encourage women to be curious about their bodies. A visit to a doctor should be a powerful learning experience, not a degrading one. By doing self-examinations, we gain the knowledge needed to ask questions and the self-confidence to demand answers. We work in small groups. The group we form is our ultimate leverage. We have learned that people working alone don't affect change, but that people working together do.
I like the term that the women in Colorado use, self-help.
Right.
It's really nice. That's what this is all about.
Right. We are taking back what is ours. Our bodies, our spirit, our destiny, our lives. We are taking control. I'm going to discharge when you're
Hello, everybody. Hi. Hi. Thank you. I just want to know you're there. I know you're still trying to process what you just saw. My name is Tandy Isles, and I called Judith Knoop, so when I refer to her, I will refer to her as Knoop. I reconnected with Knoop in 1982. I had my first child in 1981 and had the privilege of spending 18 months at home being a stay-at-home mom. I ran into Knoop at a corner market, and she informed me she was looking for a health educator to work at the Teen OB clinic, and she encouraged me to apply for the position, and I did, and I got the job. She was the best boss, mentor, friend I could ever have. She taught me how to fully understand how to work with young women, especially pregnant teens. She taught me how to teach prenatal health, how to assist teens while in labor, how to conduct well baby care. The teens loved her, and they especially loved her non-judgmental approach to caring for them and their families. And I will never forget this one story where I was trying to get these young women to breastfeed, and they were like, you know, they didn't want to touch their bodies. And so I had to understand that they were like a different breed. You know, they weren't adults. They were kids. But what I did learn from Judith around that whole process was to kind of really meet them where they were at. So the early stages of harm reduction. And what I learned was that they were really, really interested in their nails. So I thought, okay, we will be painting nails and they will be drinking milk. And that was a way for us to get them to drink milk to get their calcium. In 1983, I went to the first Black Women's Health Conference in Atlanta. And Judith also made the trek. I brought along my then 2-year-old son, Mikkel. And when I wanted to go to a Black Women's Only workshop, Judith offered to take care of my son. I will never forget the love I felt for her in that moment. I was able to leave my child in the hands of the woman whom I most respected and loved. She told me later that my son looked up at her and said, "Mommy?" Her humor was infectious. She was incredibly funny and had me and her staff in stitches most of the time. When I became pregnant with my second child and was close to my due date, I was walking down the hall in the Teen OB clinic, leading a group of pregnant teens walking down the hall, and she said, "There goes the mother hen leading her ducklings." In closing, the last time I saw Judith was a year ago for dinner. Prior to that, she came to my 60th birthday gathering. And a month after that gathering, my sister-in-law passed away, and Judith knew Karen, and Judith wanted to get together to sort of console me and just kind of connect. got together for dinner, and it was incredible. I mean, we didn't see each other very much, but when we did, we reconnected in a way that sisters connect. I knew, can you hear me? Okay, I knew Judith for over 30 years, and I didn't get to see her very much, but again, when I saw her, it was just magical. She loved her family and talked about them often, and I just want you all to know that she loved you all so very much, and you will be, she will be sorely missed, and she loved you so, so very much. And I just want you to know that if you know nothing else, Judith loved her family. Thank you. My really good friend, Betsy.
I don't need this, right? Unless I want to put on a nose or something. Hi, everyone. My name is Betsy Strasberg, and I've been a longtime friend of Judith's for almost 3 decades. Our friendship passed through many stages of our lives in our roles as moms and grandmas, friendships, women's and social justice politics, love of movies, jazz, dance, and shopping, especially for shoes, as many of you know. Tandy has described the importance of Judith in her life, and I'll be transitioning beyond San Francisco General Hospital. But it's because of Tandy that I got to know Judith and what blossomed into a deep friendship. I covered Tandy's maternity leave as a health educator at San Francisco General T&OB Clinic, where I shared an office with Judith. We were both nurses and health educators, and our friendship began there. Judith had such a deep connection with the people at San Francisco General, the patients and staff, many of whom are here. She would tell her friends about her patients in her wonderful theatrical storytelling ways, with laughter, sometimes frustration, but most of all respect and appreciation of their perseverance. There was also a love-hate relationship with the hospital, policies, personnel, and organization. But it was the love that guided her, the love of helping empower people, providing education, skills, respect, and of course, laughter. Judith was one of the funniest people I know with an incredible wit, as many people have mentioned. Finally, the time came for Judith to move beyond her, quote, working life. Though she stretched it out for another 7 years as a per diem nurse, she had trouble cutting this cord, though not the cord of babies. It was time for the next stage of life, where you didn't wake up every morning and know where you needed to be and how you were needed. Judith was also no longer needed in the same way by her family, now mature adults and grandkids more into their peers. This is a hard transition for many of us, and Judith's life reflected this. Judith and I were in a women's midlife group for over a decade, with Robin and Yolanda and others who were here for a shorter time. We shared the ups and downs of our lives in our multiple roles as women and supported each other, probing deep questions, not expecting answers, but trying to understand ourselves as aging women in our society. Judith's feelings ran deep, sometimes shared, sometimes private. Her edges were softening, but not her wit, not her generosity and compassion. When I think of Judith, the word fierce comes to mind. Fierce in love, wit and humor, commitment, values of peace and social justice, and especially for the rights of women and children, cultural delights, and creating beauty, whether in her home or in a quilt to give to another. Her love and her dedication to her family and friends and communities were at the core of her life. Judith was funny and serious, brave and insecure, social and private, kind and sometimes contentious, fierce and soft, sure and vulnerable, but always generous in heart and deed. In retrospect, I come back to the importance in the women's movement of the, quote, personal is political and political is is personal. Judith spearheaded the formation of groups and movements where people came together for support and empowerment. I think she was so successful at this because she needed this herself. She rightfully projected that people need support and community to grow and build their lives. She needed to be among others, giving and receiving. This, I believe, is her legacy. Thank you, Knoop, for the love you have brought to this world, to strangers and to those closest to you. Your friendship is like one of your beautiful quilts or knitted scarves, warm and embracing. I hope you have known deep down inside how much you are admired and loved, and how many lives you have enhanced. Thank you.
You know, it's a sad season when a spirit vanishes. 30 plus years of our lives lived together, Judy and me. Intersecting, drifting apart, walking together by the same riverbed. Walking without her seems imponderable. I met Judy in 1971, and then years later in the early 80s, we became friends, and then over time, we became witnesses for each other, truth tellers, confidants for our secret pains and our secret joys. We became safe harbor. I loved Judy's love of adventure, and she found adventure everywhere, in a photography show, in jewelry, in clothes, in a sail, in the symphony, in theater. I loved Judy's love for her children. Oh, she would talk about Tanya, Michelle, Jeff, and for each with such love and compassion and pride. And then later, she would tell me about the adventures of Trevor, Tona, and Sochi, and she would have a new sound of love in her voice. Always, her deep connection to her family was on her mind. The stories she would tell of growing up with aunts and uncles and cousins, her rebel years, early married life, baking, and her ocean voyage to Spain. And in Spain, more adventures with Robert Graves. And the spirits that are surrounding her, becoming a healer, raising her children, boyfriends, stories of teen mothers in general, endless outing with friends, so many friends. Quilting, retirement, this person, that movie, this triumph. 2, 3, 4 times a week, sometimes more, if one of us was in crisis. We talk on the phone about nothing, about everything, and the best of those times came when one or the other spoke from the deepest truth in response to the unresolvable. That's what we did. In our best moments. We listened, we heard, we cleansed. And sometimes we found ourselves laughing for days about the same ridiculous nothing. You could see that Judy had a healer's heart in all that she did in her work and for others. At a restaurant, in line for a movie, out of nowhere, women would walk up and remind Judy about a birth that she had attended. And with that same fierce courage, she aimed to heal her own wounds through her programs of spiritual seeking. I have always been amazed by Judy's tenacity in working to find a way to integrate her own power with an acceptance of its limitations. In the last year, I would say, Judy, go to a doctor, and she would look past me. And now I look back at her and can say that rather than avoiding the issue of health, Judy declared her way through this world all the way to the very end. When I see that, I find myself honoring her for her constancy and her clarity of vision. Sometimes on the phone, when I would prattle on and on, she would remind me. We're just little humans trying to do our best. And throughout her life, I know that's what Judy did, her best. And today, I wish I could call and tell her.
Hello, my name is Betsy McGinn, often referred to as the other Betsy. I'm here today as Judith's friend, but Tanya asked another friend of ours, Sharon, to speak today, and unfortunately Sharon couldn't be here because she had surgery, so I'm her understudy. And I'm hoping that my friendship with Sharon and Judith for 23 years can help me convey Sharon's loving message. A tribute to Judith Knoop, the transition from Judy to Judith. 25 years ago, I needed a new direction away from just existing and kind of empty to something more. Then I met Judith, who was already on that path. She put her hand in mine, and so began our journey of discovery and quiet celebration of a higher power. She demonstrated and lived compassion, wicked humor, and love. One day at a time, she helped me slow down and breathe into a comfortable spiritual path, not a woo-woo formal experience, but something we could live with one day at a time. She walked with me along the path of often difficult feelings and emotions, gave them safety, and showed me how to surrender with acceptance and courage. She had a lot of that. The path evolved into a deep friendship. She taught and showed me how to find the wisdom to know the difference of my noise and my mishigas in my head, and the spiritual answer. Since she is a quilter in the quilt of my life, she is the thread that has kept my pieces together. My life has been forever changed because of you, Judith. My life is now forever changed without you. So I think it's time to tell a little off-script story. People have alluded to how wonderful a storyteller Judith always was, and I particularly loved to hear the stories of her grandkids. She loved them so dearly, and when one of them was very, very young, they went to Cirque du Soleil, and Judith said, "What did you think of it?" And they said, "Daddy, Mama, it blew my mind." And that has stayed so precious to me. My husband and I use that all the time whenever we're excited or enthused about something. "Daddy, Mama, you blew my mind. It blew my mind." And so I just want to say to Judith, "Daddy, Mama, you blew our mind."
Good evening. I'm Michelle, Judy's second daughter. And I just wanted to say a few words about how that was. And Lynn reminded me of the consciousness raising groups that used to happen in our living room. I remember coming home, taking the bus home from ballet class at night. I'd get home around 8, and I'd get to the living room, and I'd have to tiptoe over 20, sometimes 30 women sitting on the floor in the living room having a meeting about something or other. But everyone was always very sweet and tried to move for me. So my mom's love and compassion was enormous.
deep. And even at my worst moments, I knew with 100% certainty that she would be there for me and my brother and sister, no matter what. But not only for me and my siblings, I also saw how she loved and was there for her friends, her family, and even for strangers. As we all know, one of the important themes of her life was the struggle for social justice. When I was a young and curious person, I would ask her questions like, "Mom, what is capitalism anyway?" And she would say, "It's evil. It creates poverty and it justifies poverty." "But Mom, explain." She would just throw up her hands in indignation at it all. She and her generation struggled on many fronts, and I have always been grateful to you for the freedoms that you have won for me, my sisters, my brother, and our sons and daughters. You changed the world for us all. Her spirit was and is indomitable. And I feel it when I give it all I've got. In work, in friendship, or in Zumba class, when I dance all out, just especially for her. I feel her when I cook, clean, and love my children. I feel her when I peel a tangerine, taste extra virgin olive oil, listen to Ray Charles or Stan Getz, and when I feel a cool, fresh wind blow through the window at night. She taught me to play with my children, to encourage their interests, and to love and accept them for all they are. She was an utterly doting grandmother. Her 3 young grandchildren spent a lot of time with Daddy Mama. For them, she always had games to play, books to read, art projects to do, places to visit, treats to eat, and time to spend. She was always there for us. And according to her one and only adoring granddaughter, she was outstanding, out of this world, and I think on this one we can all agree, uber fancy. Her spirit lives in all of us. Thank you, Mom, for your time here with us, then and now. We love you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Juan, and I am the father of 2 Judith's grandsons. And we are not here to remember her, we are here to not forget her. She did so many wonderful things for so many people out there, people that she doesn't, that they don't even know her, but they live because of her job, because of her dedication to make the lives of women better. And her heart was full of love, her mind good ideas, and her body full of energy. So she always had something to do, and everything that she did, it was good, and it was good for everybody, for the whole community. So thank you very much for that, and she will be always on our hearts. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say a couple things about what a great grandmother she was as well. And just seeing the photos of her, the kids, and the grandchildren, just seeing her so joyous and alive. And, she was such a great teacher, and, as everybody's talked about how much she loved babies and kids. And I always knew I could just call her, go over there, and with Trav, and knew that I was in loving hands, that he was in loving hands, and that I could learn what I needed to learn and do what I needed to do. And just, it was so beautiful to see her, just incredible love for them. So, thank you all for being here. It's been an amazing afternoon.
been said, but there's always more to say, and this is time now to go back into the lobby. It's ours until 6 o'clock, and Judy is, I hear her saying, get out there and schmooze. So thank you all for coming, and also thank you to the family, to these beautiful people. It's just a glorious, glorious afternoon and such an incredible effort. Thanks all for coming, and now let's go out there and have something to eat and drink and get to know each other some more. Thank you.
Fly out.